Judge Judy gets told, "I own you," by a billionaire's stepson in open court, but what this arrogant heir didn't know was that he just made the biggest mistake of his privileged life, because the evidence Judge Judy was holding would not only destroy his inheritance, it would land him in prison, strip his lawyer of everything, and change elder protection laws across 38 states. And the twist? The dying billionaire he manipulated had left one final secret that would expose everything. The courtroom was packed that Tuesday morning, cameras positioned at every angle, the gallery filled with spectators who'd lined up since dawn hoping to witness Judge Judy in action. The air hummed with that electric anticipation that comes before something explosive, though no one yet knew just how explosive this case would become. At the plaintiff's table sat Sarah Chen, 29 years old, wearing a simple black dress, her face composed but her eyes red-rimmed from sleepless nights and endless tears. Beside her, her brother David, 32, sat rigid in his chair, jaw clenched, hands folded so tightly his knuckles had gone white. They were the biological children of Theodore Chen, tech billionaire, innovator, philanthropist, a man worth $400 million who had died 6 months earlier, leaving behind a fortune and a family torn apart by greed. At the defendant's table, Marcus Sterling lounged in his chair like a king on a throne, 28 years old, wearing a suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent, his designer watch catching the courtroom lights with every casual movement of his wrist. His hair was perfectly styled, his smile was a smirk, and his posture screamed one thing: untouchable. Beside him sat Victor Kraus, his attorney, a man with silver hair, expensive cufflinks, and the kind of smooth confidence that comes from winning cases through intimidation rather than integrity. Before we dive into this incredible case, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love seeing where my viewers are around the world. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss more unbelievable cases like this one. Now, sit back, relax, and enjoy the video. The bailiff's voice cut through the murmurs. All rise. The Honorable Judge Judith Scheindlin presiding. Everyone stood as Judge Judy entered, her robe flowing behind her, her stride purposeful, her face that perfect mask of no-nonsense authority that had made her a television icon and a courtroom legend. She took her seat behind the bench, surveyed the room with sharp eyes that missed nothing, and banged her gavel once. The sound echoed like a gunshot. "Be seated," she commanded, and everyone obeyed instantly. Everyone except Marcus Sterling, who took his time, adjusting his suit jacket, glancing at his phone one last time before casually dropping into his chair. Judge Judy's eyes locked onto him for just a moment, a flicker of recognition, not of his face, but of his type. She'd seen 1,000 Marcus Sterlings walk through her courtroom, entitled, arrogant, convinced that money could buy anything, including justice. She opened the case file in front of her, flipped through several pages with deliberate slowness, then looked up. "This is a case regarding the estate of Theodore Chen, deceased, is that correct?" she asked, her voice crisp and clear. Sarah's attorney, James Park, stood. "Yes, Your Honor. My clients, Sarah and David Chen, are contesting a codicil to their late father's will that was executed under suspicious circumstances just 1 week before Mr. Chen's death." Judge Judy nodded. "And the defendant, Mr. Marcus Sterling, claims the codicil is valid and entitles him to $15 million plus the family estate." Victor Kraus rose smoothly. "That is correct, Your Honor. Mr. Sterling was the stepson of the deceased, and Theodore Chen made it very clear in his final days that he wished to provide for." "I didn't ask for your speech, Counselor," Judge Judy interrupted, her tone sharp as a blade. "I asked for confirmation." "Sit down." Victor Kraus's smile faltered for just a second before he sat. Marcus Sterling's smirk widened. He leaned over and whispered something to his attorney, loud enough that the microphones caught it. "Told you, this'll be easy." Judge Judy's head snapped toward him. "Mr. Sterling, did you just say something?" Marcus looked up, that smirk still plastered on his face, and shrugged. "Just noting that I have a meeting after this, Your Honor." "Wealth manager. You understand." The gallery stirred, a collective intake of breath. Sarah closed her eyes, shaking her head slightly. David's fists clenched tighter. Judge Judy set down her pen very carefully, folded her hands on the bench, and leaned forward. Her voice was quiet, dangerously quiet. "No, Mr. Sterling, I don't understand. Why don't you explain it to me?" Marcus leaned back in his chair, completely at ease. "I just mean, Your Honor, that some of us have financial obligations that require timely attention. I'm sure in your line of work, you're used to, simpler matters. But my portfolio, your portfolio," Judge Judy repeated slowly, her eyes narrowing. "Yes, ma'am. Investments, properties, trusts. It's complicated." "I'm sure, you're sure of what, exactly?" Judge Judy's voice had dropped to that tone everyone who watched her show knew meant danger. But Marcus Sterling, in his infinite arrogance, didn't recognize the warning. He smiled, that same entitled, condescending smile. "I'm sure that with all due respect, Your Honor, you're doing your best. But my family's legal team has been handling complex estates for decades. They have connections that reach all the way to, connections," Judge Judy interrupted, her voice like ice. "Are you telling me about connections in my courtroom, Mr. Sterling?" Marcus's smile widened. He leaned forward now, elbows on the table, looking directly at Judge Judy with absolute confidence. And then he said the words that would destroy his life. "What I'm saying, Your Honor, is that my stepfather's legal team, my current representation, they have more influence than most people in this building will ever see. So yes, I have connections. And respectfully." He paused, letting the word hang in the air like a threat. "I own you." The courtroom exploded. Not in sound, but in shock. The air itself seemed to freeze. Sarah's hand flew to her mouth. David's eyes went wide. James Park, their attorney, looked like he'd been slapped. Victor Krause's face went pale, his hand reaching out as if to pull Marcus back from the edge of the cliff he'd just jumped off. The bailiff's hand moved instinctively toward his belt. The court reporter's fingers froze above her keys. The cameras zoomed in, capturing every pixel of the moment. And Judge Judy, for the first time in 40 years on the bench, went absolutely silent. Not because she didn't know what to say, but because she was choosing her words very, very carefully. 3 seconds passed. They felt like 3 hours. Then Judge Judy spoke, her voice so calm it was terrifying. "Mr. Sterling, did you just tell me that you own me?" Marcus, completely oblivious to the danger, nodded. "I'm saying that my family's legal reach, our financial power, it's significant. I think it's important for everyone to understand the reality of the situation before we waste more time on, the reality," Judge Judy said softly. She picked up her pen. She wrote something on her notepad. Then she looked up, and her eyes were like steel. "Mr. Sterling, in 40 years of sitting on this bench, I have heard a lot of stupid things come out of a lot of stupid mouths. But what you just said might be the stupidest thing I've ever heard. Sit down." Marcus blinked, his confidence flickering for the first time. "Your Honor, I don't think," I said. "Sit down." Her voice cracked like a whip. Marcus sat. But his smirk didn't entirely disappear. He glanced at Victor Krause, who was now furiously scribbling notes, his face a mask of barely contained panic. Judge Judy flipped open the case file again, slowly, deliberately. She pulled out a document, held it up to the light, examined it as if she were seeing it for the first time, though everyone in that room knew she'd already read every word 3 times over. "Let's talk about this codicil, shall we?" she said, her voice conversational now, almost pleasant. "According to this document, Theodore Chen, a man worth $400 million, who had a will drafted by one of the most prestigious estate attorneys in the state, decided 1 week before his death, while in hospice care, heavily medicated, barely conscious, to write a codicil leaving $15 million in his mansion to you, Mr. Sterling. His stepson. A young man he'd known for exactly 3 years." She looked up. "Does that sound right to you?" Marcus nodded eagerly. "Yes, Your Honor. Theodore and I were very close. After my mother passed, he told me. I didn't ask what he told you, Judge Judy interrupted. I asked if the facts I just stated are correct. Yes, but, and this codicil was witnessed by 2 paralegals who work for your attorney, Mr. Kraus, is that also correct? Marcus hesitated. Victor Kraus stood quickly. Your Honor, the witnesses were properly qualified under state law. I asked Mr. Sterling, not you. Sit down. Victor sat. Marcus cleared his throat. Yes, they worked for Mr. Kraus, but, and your stepfather's biological children, Sarah and David Chen, were not informed of this codicil until after the funeral, correct? Well, I didn't think, correct? Judge Judy's voice was sharp now. Yes, Marcus admitted, his smirk finally fading. Judge Judy set the document down. She folded her hands again. And then she smiled. It was not a warm smile. Mr. Sterling, you just told me you own me. That your connections, your power, your money make you untouchable. So let me tell you what's about to happen in my courtroom. I'm going to look at every single piece of evidence in this case. Every document, every witness statement, every transaction. And if I find even a hint of fraud, coercion, or manipulation, I'm going to do more than rule against you. I'm going to make sure everyone knows exactly what kind of person you really are. Do you understand me? For the first time, Marcus Sterling's confidence cracked. His eyes darted to his attorney, looking for reassurance. Victor Kraus was staring down at his notes, refusing to meet his gaze. The gallery was silent, everyone leaning forward, sensing blood in the water. Judge Judy picked up her gavel. Now, Mr. Sterling, let's see just how much you really own. And with that, she brought the gavel down, the sound echoing through the courtroom like thunder. James Park stood, his voice steady and professional. Your Honor, if I may present the timeline of events leading to Theodore Chen's death. Judge Judy nodded. Proceed. He approached the bench with a folder. Theodore Chen was diagnosed with stage 4 pancreatic cancer 14 months before his death. He entered hospice care in his home 3 months before passing. During those final 3 months, his cognitive function deteriorated rapidly due to both the disease and heavy pain medication. Medical records show he was on morphine, fentanyl, and sedatives that left him unconscious for 18 to 20 hours per day. Sarah Chen wiped her eyes as James continued. Mr. Chen's original will, drafted 5 years ago when he was healthy and of sound mind, left his entire estate to his biological children, Sarah and David. The will was comprehensive, notarized by his longtime attorney Richard Morrison, and witnessed by independent parties. It was a clear, thoughtful document that reflected years of estate planning. Judge Judy examined the original will. And Mr. Morrison was not involved in this codicil? No, Your Honor. In fact, Mr. Morrison was never contacted. He learned of the codicil only after Mr. Chen's death when Mr. Sterling's attorney, Victor Kraus, filed it with the probate court. Judge Judy's eyes shifted to Victor Kraus. Mr. Kraus, why wasn't Mr. Chen's longtime attorney involved in such a significant change to his estate plan? Victor stood slowly. Your Honor, Mr. Sterling contacted our firm directly. We were told that Mr. Chen wanted to make amendments quickly and didn't want to burden his previous counsel. Didn't want to burden him, Judge Judy repeated flatly. A man is dying, wants to change his will to give away $15 million, and he's worried about burdening his attorney? The sarcasm in her voice was thick enough to cut. Victor shifted uncomfortably. Those were the instructions we received, Your Honor. From whom? Mr. Chen or Mr. Sterling? Silence. Victor's jaw tightened. Mr. Sterling conveyed Mr. Chen's wishes to us. I see, Judge Judy said coldly. So a stepson you'd never met before tells you a dying, heavily medicated billionaire wants to disinherit his children, and you didn't think to verify this directly with the man himself or his longtime legal counsel? Your Honor, we followed proper legal procedures. I didn't ask about procedures. I asked about common sense and ethics. Sit down. James Park continued. Your Honor, we have security footage from the hospice facility showing Mr. Sterling's visits to Theodore Chun during those final weeks. A bailiff wheeled in a monitor. The footage began to play, timestamps visible in the corner. This is from 11 days before Mr. Chen's death, 2 a.m. The screen showed Marcus Sterling entering Theodore Chen's room. The elderly man was clearly unconscious, medical equipment beeping steadily. Marcus approached the bed, looked around, then placed a stack of papers on the bedside table. He stood there for 43 minutes. The timestamp proved it. What is he doing for 43 minutes at 2 in the morning with an unconscious man? Judge Judy asked, her voice sharp. Marcus leaned forward to speak, but his attorney grabbed his arm, whispering urgently. Judge Judy noticed. Mr. Sterling, do you have something to say? Marcus's face was red now. I was praying. Keeping him company. For 43 minutes. At 2 a.m. While he was unconscious. I cared about Theodore. I'm sure you did, Judge Judy said, her tone dripping with skepticism. The next video played. This is 3 days later, also 2 a.m. Again, Marcus entered. This time, he pulled a chair close to the bed, took Theodore's hand, and appeared to be moving it across papers. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Judge Judy leaned forward, watching intently. Is that what I think it is? James Park nodded. Your Honor, we believe Mr. Sterling was physically guiding Mr. Chen's hand to sign documents while Mr. Chen was non-responsive. The courtroom erupted in gasps and murmurs. Marcus shot to his feet. That's not, he asked me to help him. Judge Judy's gavel came down hard. Mr. Sterling, one more outburst and I'll hold you in contempt. Sit down and be quiet. Marcus sat, but his face was flushed. His arrogance replaced by rising panic. James Park reached into his briefcase and pulled out a sealed envelope. Your Honor, we have a sworn affidavit from Deborah Mills, the hospice nurse who cared for Theodore Chun during his final 2 weeks. Judge Judy took the document, her eyes scanning the pages with laser focus. The courtroom held its breath. After a long moment, she looked up, her face unreadable. Mr. Park, I'm going to read portions of this aloud. I want everyone in this room to hear it. She cleared her throat and began. I, Deborah Mills, registered nurse with 15 years of hospice experience, do solemnly swear the following is true and accurate to the best of my knowledge. During the final 14 days of Theodore Chen's life, he was under my direct care. Mr. Chen was heavily sedated due to extreme pain and was rarely conscious. When he was awake, he was confused and disoriented, repeatedly asking for his children, Sarah and David. Judge Judy paused, letting those words sink in. Sarah was crying quietly now, her brother's arm around her shoulders. On multiple occasions, Judge Judy continued reading, I observed Marcus Sterling prevent Mr. Chen's children from visiting, claiming their father needed rest. Mr. Sterling instructed staff that all calls to Mr. Chen should go through him first. On the evening of March 15, I entered Mr. Chen's room at approximately 2:15 a.m. to administer medication. I found Mr. Sterling holding Mr. Chen's hand over a stack of papers. Mr. Chen's eyes were closed, and he was non-responsive. Mr. Sterling was whispering, just one more signature, Theodore, one more, while physically moving Mr. Chen's hand across the page. The courtroom was dead silent except for the sound of Sarah's muffled sobs. Judge Judy's voice grew harder. I immediately felt this was wrong. Mr. Chen could not have understood what he was signing. He was unconscious. I reported my concerns to my supervisor the following morning, and my report was documented in Mr. Chen's medical file. Judge Judy set the affidavit down and looked directly at Marcus Sterling. His face had gone pale, all traces of his earlier smirk completely gone. Mr. Sterling, this nurse watched you manipulate an unconscious dying man's hand across legal documents. What do you have to say about that? Marcus's mouth opened, but no words came out. Victor Kraus stood quickly. Your Honor, this is hearsay, unverified accusations from, hearsay. Judge Judy's voice rose. This is a sworn affidavit from a licensed medical professional with 15 years of experience who has no reason to lie. She documented her concerns in real time. This isn't hearsay, counselor. This is evidence. And we're just getting started. She reached for another document in the case file. Let's talk about phone records, shall we? Because this is where things get really interesting. Marcus Sterling slumped in his chair, and for the first time since walking into that courtroom, he looked truly afraid. Judge Judy held up a sheaf of papers, her eyes blazing. These are Theodore Chen's phone records, subpoenaed by the plaintiffs. Very interesting reading. She turned to Marcus. Mr. Sterling, you presented text messages allegedly from Theodore, saying he wanted you to inherit everything. Sweet messages about how you were like a son to him. Marcus nodded weakly. Yes, he sent those to me. Except he didn't, Judge Judy said coldly. These records show those texts were sent from Theodore's phone while he was documented as unconscious in medical records. Time-stamped, verified by 3 different sources. And the IP address? She paused for effect. Traces back to your apartment, Mr. Sterling. Not the hospice facility. Your apartment. The gallery erupted. Marcus's face went white as paper. That's not, I borrowed his phone for repairs. You stole a dying man's phone and sent yourself fake messages to justify stealing his fortune, Judge Judy said, her voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. Victor Kraus was frantically whispering to Marcus, but Marcus wasn't listening. He was staring at the evidence in Judge Judy's hands like it was a loaded gun. Your Honor, we need a continuance to review, Victor tried. Denied, Judge Judy snapped. Sit down, counselor. We're not done. Not even close. Judge Judy leaned back in her chair, her eyes never leaving Marcus Sterling. Mr. Sterling, I've seen a lot in 40 years. Con artists, liars, thieves. But what you did? Exploiting a dying man in his most vulnerable moments. That's a special kind of evil. She picked up her gavel, and the courtroom went silent. Here's my ruling. First, the codicil is null and void. It was obtained through fraud, coercion, and exploitation of an incapacitated person. Theodore Chen's original will is hereby reinstated in full. Every penny goes to Sarah and David Chen, as their father intended when he was of sound mind. Sarah collapsed into her brother's arms, sobbing with relief. David closed his eyes, tears streaming down his face. Second, Judge Judy continued, her voice like steel, Mr. Sterling, you have 72 hours to vacate the Chen family mansion. You will take only what you brought into that house. Anything else is theft, and I will personally ensure you're prosecuted. Marcus tried to speak, but Judge Judy held up her hand. Third, Mr. Victor Kraus. I'm forwarding this entire case file to the State Bar Association. Your estate planning services look like elder abuse and fraud. They'll be very interested in how you do business. Victor Kraus sank into his chair, his face ashen. Fourth, I'm referring this matter to the district attorney for criminal investigation. Mr. Sterling, you're looking at potential charges of fraud, forgery, identity theft, and elder abuse. These are felonies. You understand what that means? Marcus's hands were shaking now. All his arrogance had evaporated, replaced by pure terror. Your Honor, please, you didn't mean to get caught, Judge Judy interrupted. That's different from not meaning to do it. You planned this. You executed it. You thought you'd get away with it because you had money and connections. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to that dangerous quiet tone. You told me you owned me, Mr. Sterling. You thought your wealth made you untouchable. But here's what you're going to learn, justice isn't for sale. Character matters more than connections. And in my courtroom, the truth always wins. She banged her gavel. Case dismissed. Get out of my courtroom. Marcus stood on shaky legs, his expensive suit suddenly looking like a costume. The walk to the courtroom doors felt like a mile. Every eye was on him. Someone in the gallery whispered, "Entitled brat." Another muttered, "Criminal." The cameras captured every step of his humiliation. Outside, news vans were already setting up. The story was breaking in real time. Headlines flashing across screens: Billionaire's stepson exposed in elder fraud scheme. Judge Judy destroys arrogant heir in viral courtroom takedown. Within hours, the footage of Marcus saying, "I own you," had spread across every social media platform. Millions of views. Thousands of comments. People were outraged, calling for justice, praising Judge Judy's handling of the case. The district attorney's office held a press conference that afternoon. "We take elder abuse very seriously," the DA announced, standing behind a podium with a dozen microphones. "Based on the evidence presented in court today, we're opening a full criminal investigation into Marcus Sterling's actions. If charges are warranted, we will prosecute to the fullest extent of the law." Back at the Chin mansion, sheriff's deputies supervised as Marcus packed his belongings. He tried to take artwork, expensive furniture, claiming they were gifts. "Sir, court order says only items you brought in," a deputy said firmly. Marcus left with 3 suitcases, watching as the gates closed behind him. The home his stepfather had built, the fortune he tried to steal, all of it gone. His attorney, Victor Kraus, was already facing consequences. His law firm held an emergency partners meeting. By evening, his name was removed from the firm letterhead. The state bar opened a formal investigation. Other clients began requesting their files be transferred. And Marcus Sterling, who'd walked into that courtroom thinking he was untouchable, now faced the very real possibility of prison. All because he'd underestimated one woman who refused to be owned by anyone. The Marcus Sterling case didn't just end in one courtroom. It sparked a wildfire of change that swept across the entire nation. Within 48 hours of Judge Judy's ruling, the video had been viewed over 47 million times. But this wasn't just viral entertainment. It was a wake-up call. Legal experts began appearing on every major news network, dissecting the case, explaining how common elder financial abuse actually was. "This happens every single day in America," said Professor Linda Martinez, an elder law specialist at Georgetown University, during a CNN interview. 1 in 10 elderly adults experiences some form of financial exploitation. The average loss is over $100,000. Most cases go unreported because families are ashamed, or the victims are too confused to understand they've been manipulated. Marcus Sterling got caught because Sarah and David Chin fought back. But thousands of families suffer in silence. The story resonated because it was personal. Everyone had an elderly parent, grandparent, aunt, or uncle. Everyone could imagine their loved one being exploited in their final vulnerable days. The comment sections filled with stories. "This happened to my grandmother. My uncle changed her will when she had dementia. We had no proof. My father's caregiver convinced him to make her a beneficiary. He died before we could stop it. I'm a nurse and I see this constantly. Thank God someone finally exposed it on this scale." Within a week, state legislators began taking action. Senator Patricia Williams from California stood on the Senate floor with a proposed bill in her hand. The Theodore Chin Protection Act will ensure what happened to this family never happens again. We're requiring mandatory video recording of any will or codicil signing for individuals over 70 or in medical care. We're mandating independent witnesses who cannot be connected to any beneficiary. We're requiring medical capacity evaluations within 48 hours of document execution. And we're dramatically increasing penalties for elder financial abuse. The response was overwhelming and bipartisan. Republican Senator James Crawford from Texas co-sponsored the bill. This isn't about politics. This is about protecting our most vulnerable citizens. My own mother is 82. The thought of someone exploiting her the way Marcus Sterling exploited Theodore Chen makes my blood boil. We need these protections now. The bill passed the California legislature 38-2. Then Oregon adopted similar legislation. Then Washington. Then Arizona. Within 18 months, 38 states had passed versions of the Theodore Chen Protection Act. But the changes went deeper than legislation. The American Bar Association issued new ethical guidelines for estate planning attorneys. Attorneys must exercise heightened diligence when drafting documents for elderly or incapacitated clients, the advisory stated. Red flags include last-minute changes, exclusion of long-time legal counsel, witnesses connected to beneficiaries, and lack of independent medical evaluation. Attorneys who ignore these warnings face disciplinary action. Victor Krause became the first attorney disciplined under the new guidelines. After a 3-month investigation, the state bar found he had violated professional conduct rules by failing to ensure Theodore Chen had capacity, by accepting payment from Marcus Sterling before services were rendered, and by allowing his own employees to witness a document that benefited his client. His law license was revoked. 30 years of practice ended. His firm, once prestigious, closed its doors 6 months later, unable to recover from the reputational damage. Healthcare facilities transformed their protocols as well. The National Hospice and Palliative Care Organization held an emergency conference, inviting Deborah Mills, the nurse who'd reported Marcus Sterling's behavior, as the keynote speaker. I was terrified to speak up, Deborah told an audience of 1,200 healthcare professionals. I thought I might lose my job, face retaliation, be accused of overstepping. But I couldn't stay silent. Theodore Chen deserved better. Every patient deserves better. The organization implemented new nationwide standards. Visitor logs with timestamps and stated purposes. Mandatory documentation when non-family members visit incapacitated patients alone. Staff training on recognizing financial exploitation. Protection for whistleblowers who report suspicious activity. Deborah Mills is a hero, said Dr. Robert Kim, the organization's president. Her courage saved a family and sparked a movement. We're naming our annual ethics award after her. Banks and financial institutions joined the effort, creating alert systems for accounts belonging to elderly clients. When someone over 75 attempted to add new beneficiaries, make large transfers, or change account access, the system triggered a verification process. A compliance officer would contact the account holder directly, ask security questions, and document the conversation. If the customer seemed confused or coerced, the transaction was frozen pending investigation. We've prevented an estimated $200 million in fraudulent transfers in just the first year, reported Margaret Zhao, Chief Compliance Officer at National Trust Bank. The Theodore Chen case taught us we have a responsibility beyond just processing transactions. We're gatekeepers. We can stop this. Educational campaigns emerged nationwide. AARP launched a Protect Your Legacy initiative, hosting free workshops in community centers, teaching families how to have difficult conversations about estate planning while their loved ones were still healthy. Universities added the Marcus Sterling case to ethics curricula in law schools, business schools, and medical programs. Students watched the courtroom footage, analyzed what went wrong, discussed how to prevent similar situations. This case teaches us that professional responsibility isn't just about following rules, said Professor David Thompson at Yale Law School. It's about having the moral courage to say no when something feels wrong, even if it costs you money or prestige. And through it all, Judge Judy's words echoed, "Justice isn't for sale. Character matters more than connections. In my courtroom, the truth always wins." Those words became a rallying cry for a generation demanding accountability, ethics, and protection for the vulnerable. 18 months after that explosive courtroom showdown, Marcus Sterling stood before a judge once again. But this time, he wore an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed, his head bowed. The criminal trial had lasted 3 weeks. The jury deliberated for 4 hours. The verdict: guilty on all counts. Fraud, elder abuse, forgery, identity theft. The judge sentenced him to 12 years in state prison and ordered him to pay $500,000 in restitution to the Chin family. "Mr. Sterling," the judge said at sentencing, "you exploited a dying man for money. You showed no remorse, only entitlement. Perhaps prison will teach you what your privilege never did: actions have consequences." Sarah Chin delivered a victim impact statement that brought the courtroom to tears. "My father was brilliant, kind, and generous. He built a company that employed thousands and changed lives. In his final days, when he should have been surrounded by peace and love, Marcus Sterling saw only an opportunity. He didn't just try to steal money. He tried to erase my father's wishes, his dignity, his voice. That's unforgivable." She paused, wiping her eyes. But from this tragedy came something beautiful. Laws changed. Protections were created. Families were saved from experiencing what we went through. That's my father's real legacy.